Hello again, everybody. Hope everyone had a good lunch, all that good stuff. Ladies and gentlemen, AI is the new front door for hotel discovery. However, it is not neutral. It has biases. It responds to very specific signals. And the hotels that figure that out are going to be developing compounding distribution advantages for years to come. And the ones that don't may find themselves invisible to a growing share of travelers and never quite know why. Ladies and gentlemen, this is the AI visibility edge. I'm going to let this burn in on the screen for a second and just take it in for a second. ChatGPT now has over 900 million users. Booking, Expedia, they are embedded on their app store. If someone queries ChatGPT, the answer that comes out is shaping real booking decisions. So if your property is not appearing, you are losing booking opportunities at scale. So how does ChatGPT decide who to recommend? Most people here have been through a similar shift like this, right? Not too long ago, it was Google, because SEO was driving hotel discovery. And hotels that figured it out were developing compounding distribution advantages for years, right? Right now, feels like a very similar time, but it's maybe playing out a bit quicker. The traveler journey is changing. It used to be search, click, browse, book. Now it's ask, get recommendation, and book. And ladies and gentlemen, that middle step, the get recommendation step, that is the new battleground. And we wanted to understand how it works. So here's what we did. We wanted to know, what hotels is AI recommending? Why is it recommending those hotels and not others? And where does it all come from? And the key to all of this is that we are going to answer these questions right now with data, okay? The goal right now is to give you guys all a really good understanding of how this works. It's constantly changing, it's very dynamic, but you are going to get a good understanding of how this is working behind the black box, okay? Okay? There we go. All right, let's get into it. Here we go. Our study was done in ChatGPT, and what we did, we identified 9 global markets, okay, and 5 of what we call traveler personas. Traveler persona, this is going to be things like a luxury traveler, or a family traveler, or a budget traveler, okay? So 9 destinations, 5 personas, 9 times 5, 45 unique combinations. For each of those combinations, we applied 101 unique prompts. What do I mean by this? Let's hypothetically say we were doing Los Angeles and we were doing family travelers. One prompt might be, I have 2 kids. Where should I stay in Los Angeles? Another one might be, I'm traveling to Los Angeles with my kids. Where should I stay for hotels? Okay? That will be an example. Okay? So 101 prompts, 45 combinations. That equals 4,545 prompts that we fed into ChatGPT every single time with a neutral, independent crawler, no bias. Okay? So here we go. Left are the markets that we looked at. The right are the personas. The markets. Europe and the US, we wanted 2 primary markets, 1 secondary, tertiary market, and 1 highly seasonal market, okay? On the right, oh, and we also have Tokyo, Tokyo for APAC. On the right, we have the personas, and in the middle, you'll notice one that says generic. These are going to be the personas where they don't specify anything. They don't give any further guidance. It's, I need a hotel in Los Angeles. Generic, okay? Ladies and gentlemen, the scale and the rigor of what we did matter. Because we could say with confidence that what we found reflects stable underlying patterns in ChatGPT's behavior. All right, data time. With data people, it's time to dig in. First and foremost, 4,545 prompts resulted in 49,707 hotels being mentioned. Now, to be clear, this is not uniques. To be honest, the fact that it is not uniques, that's what's driving the presentation. Many were repeats. So, drum roll. Of the 49,707 hotels being mentioned by name, the number of uniques was 2,721. See a lot. I heard wows. That is what I wanted to hear. Wanted to hear some wows, okay? Everything else was a repeat, okay? And it gets even crazier. Up top, the concentration is crazier. Look at this. Top 100 most mentioned hotels accounted for over 13% of the total mentions, okay? The math is working against pretty much every hotel in this room, okay? A tiny, small group of hotels is capturing a disproportionate share of the AI's attention. And we wanted to understand that, okay? So, first thing we did was we identified two metrics. And I'm going to walk you guys through them now. One is called the market coverage rate. One is called the share of voice. We will start with the market coverage rate. Very simple, okay? What percentage of the properties in a market did ChatGPT mention, okay? Number of unique hotels mentioned in a given market divided by the hotels in the market. Very simple, okay? Now, I have on the screen the market coverage rate for each of the markets we looked at. Now, I'm going to draw your attention to a couple of things. One, Indianapolis and Park City. Okay? Smallest markets we looked at. But look how different their market coverage ratios are. Over 60% for Indianapolis, and Park City was 31%. More than 2/3 of the hotels in Park City, small market, were not even mentioned. And then look on the bottom, Tokyo, okay? Big city, 10%. Paris, similarly big city, 13%. So the through line here is that AI is surfacing 10 to 13% of the big markets we looked at, and nearly 2/3 are unmentioned in a market like Park City. AI invisibility is the default condition for most hotels. You have to work your way out of it. Metric number 2, share of voice. Also simple. Of the total mentions, what percentage does an individual hotel capture within a market? Or does a brand capture within a market? Okay? High share of voice. These are going to be your gatekeepers that the LLM or ChatGPT keeps referencing. Low share of voice, those are going to be the properties that are struggling for visibility. Okay? Now, on the screen, we have the share of voice for the number one most mentioned hotel in each market. Okay, to be clear, I'm going to say that again. The number one most mentioned hotel in each market, what that hotel's share of voice is. Now, these are ordered by the share of voice. And you'll notice that all the US markets are up top. Okay? ChatGPT seems to key in on certain hotels more in the US. Okay? But here's the other thing, is that yes, US might have bigger gatekeepers, but look at the bottom. Paris, at the bottom, their top hotel had 3% of the mentions. Paris has 2,000 hotels, roughly, roundly, 2,000. And one single hotel was getting 3% of the mentions. Now, I want to zoom out, okay? Macro view for a second. How does ChatGPT handle chain versus independent properties? So, on your screen right now, this is a breakdown of the mentions that you see by chain versus independent. First takeaway that's probably jumping out at all you guys, your numbers people, I'm sure you'd see this. Big time advantage for the chains, big time, okay? Most extreme example, Indianapolis, 6.5% independent. Tokyo, 10.5% independent. The only market where independence exceeded the chains was Paris, Now, these ratios might be arguably appropriate if it mirrored the supply in the market. But Brussels, 28% independent mentions. Brussels has much more than 28% independence. Tokyo, 11% independence, much more than 11% independence in Tokyo. Miami, 20%, same deal there. The takeaway is that chains are getting much more than their fair share of mentions. But let's dive into specific chains, okay? We're in the US right now. We're in Marriott's AI world, okay? We're all just living in it. More than a quarter, by 0.1, so it is more. More than a quarter of the mentions we got in the US were Marriott. If ChatGPT recommends a branded hotel to you, 1 in 4 shot, it is Marriott. Hilton, second, but a pretty distant second. More than 5 percentage points separated Hilton from Marriott, and then it was 9% down to IHG, okay? IHG share is 9%. And after that, much, much smaller. 54% of all the branded mentions came from the top 3 brand families. 54% from 3. We're going to compare that number in a moment. That's why I said it twice. Here is the same chart, but for Europe. Now, Marriott they're pretty much at the top, but they're technically not the top, okay? 0.1 separated Marriott from Accor. But you'll notice that the number is lower, right? It was more than a quarter in the US, now we're talking 11%. So the story here is that in Europe, it is more democratized, okay? More democratized. Not only that, 10 brands, 10 had between 2 and 5% of the mentions. US, only 5 brands had between 2 and 5 of the mentions. This echoes what we said a couple of slides ago, that ChatGPT tends to key in on certain hotels more so in the US than, for example, Europe, okay? Europe still has gatekeepers, as we can see, but it is more democratized. You want to talk democratized? Look at Tokyo. Okay? Look at Tokyo. This is the most kumbaya market we looked at. 5.8% for Hyatt, and that was the biggest. Okay? Nothing was bigger than 6%. The top 4 were all within a half a percentage point of each other. They hold hands and they hug, okay? Kumbaya in Tokyo. Marriott is not even in the top 5. They were number 8, 3.2%. What's interesting now is if you call back to a few slides ago, we knew that Tokyo was one of the markets with the fewest independent mentions. So what we see here, what's happening in Tokyo, is that they're, instead of showing independent hotels, they're just really equitably showing branded hotels. So, beyond that, the top 20 combined for 64%. 20 brands, 64%. In the US, 3 brands, 54%. That's a big difference. The takeaway I want to point out to you guys is that there's a big geographical divide between how the LLM, or in this case, ChatGPT, is showing hotels. Before we move on from this brand thing, I want to show one more thing, okay? I want to look at Los Angeles, the mentions, okay? This is the percentage of total mentions in Los Angeles. 15.2% in Marriott. Now, if that was Marriott's share of supply, that would make sense. But Marriott has less than 10% of hotels in Los Angeles. Same thing with Hilton. 14% of the mentions, less than 10% of the supply. But here's the thing. Los Angeles, it's sprawling. It's like, where does LA stop and LA County start? It's confusing. I want to talk in absolutes, okay? Absolutes. So first we'll talk about the Dorchester collection, okay? Luxury branded operator. Soft brand. How many hotels does the Dorchester collection have in Los Angeles? Absolutes. Someone knows their trivia, okay? They have 2 hotels. I don't even know what the percentage is. It's so small, but they're getting 6% of the hotel of the mentions. Omni, okay? Great brand, great brand. 5% of the mentions. How many hotels? Very good. Wow, I'm talking to hotel people. Okay. 4 Seasons, 4.5%. How many hotels? 2 or 3, because one of them is in Westlake, so that's kind of that LA County. So 2 or 3, depending on what we're talking about. You guys are good. Okay, lastly, Millennium. How many hotels? 1. Wow, you guys are great. 1 hotel, 3% of the mentions, okay? The takeaway here is that for markets like Los Angeles, your branded mentions are greatly higher than their share of supply. Okay, so we're starting to see AI has a type. Okay, most people have a type, AI, no different, okay? There's a proclivity towards branded, we know this, right? Perhaps higher end branded, we'll get there soon. But it comes down to this, okay? It is not random, it is patterned, it is consistent, okay? It is measurable, and that's good, because pattern bias can be understood and maybe even addressed, okay? So the next few slides, we're going to go through what AI prefers. But before we do, I'm going to tell you it does not prefer high-rated hotels, okay? Now, to be clear, I'm not saying they prefer not high-rated hotels, but we did the correlation, we checked the correlation between the hotels that were recommended and their review scores, and it was very weak positive, okay? So that is not it. So if that's not it, what is it? This is the breakdown of the star levels for the hotels that were mentioned. The most important stat here, though, is this is generic prompts. There was no direction, no bias. This was just, I need a hotel in blah. And you could see 4 to 5 star hotels, clear preference when the user doesn't specify a budget. It almost always defaulted to higher end options. Below 4 stars, nearly absent from generic discovery. And to be clear, generic discovery is presumably a chunk of travelers that are persuadable. They haven't necessarily made up their mind. Okay? Highest opportunity audience, and 3-star and below are barely in the room. This is the breakdown by the traveler personas: generic, luxury, business, family friendly, and budget friendly. And you can see that 3-star doesn't get a significant mention of significant proportion of the mentions unless we're talking budget friendly. 3-star being the yellow box on the right. That is the only one they're getting a significant amount of the mentions. Even business travel, okay? Hampton Inn, Courtyard, totally acceptable for corporate travelers, but 83% were in the 4 and 5-star recommendations, okay? I'm not going to Brett and asking him to stay at a 5-star hotel when I'm traveling for business, okay? Hampton Inn guy, okay? Family friendly, 73% 4 and 5-star. I'm not going to a Four Seasons when I'm traveling with my son. I'm just not, okay? 3-star hoteliers, this data should be a strategic wake-up call. Product tier right now is a bit of a headwind. The content language, the positioning, the description across digital touchpoints needs to deliberately close the gap. Now we see bias towards higher-end product. What about locational characteristics? Is ChatGPT recommending hotels based on certain locational characteristics? So we identified 6 buckets. They should be pretty self-explanatory, but transit-led, airport hotels, station hotels, play-led are going to be in the arts districts or the shopping districts, nature-led, waterfront, things of that effect, affordability, more on the periphery of the town to save some money, okay? Now, on this chart, I want you to look at the blue. Blue is play-led recommendations. It is very clear that there is a bias towards play-led, and it is very apparent when you look at the generic on the left, okay? Almost all of them, not almost all of them, but more than 50% were play-led recommendations. But the good news is ChatGPT does respond to the intent of the users. We see commercial-led properties were bigger in business-led prompts. We see affordability properties were bigger in budget prompts, okay? Nature-led, we saw that for family and luxury. But here's why this matters. The language that you're using across all digital touchpoints, OTA listings, editorial coverage, your website, that is telling the AI which travelers to send to you. So your content is no longer just marketing copy. Your content is now algorithm input. This is really telling, okay? I'm going to walk you guys through this step by step slowly, okay? Now, these are the same locational buckets, and the markets are on the bottom. So you can kind of see what buckets, what hotels were recommended for what market. Now, what I want to, now this is also on the left, these are the all prompts, okay? These are all the prompts we did. In a moment, I'm going to put the generic only on the right. But what I want you guys to look at is this, the yellow bucket. This is going to be commercial-led properties, specifically for Mallorca and for Park City, okay? And again, this was all prompts. Now, the generic prompts. And you could see that for Mallorca and for Park City, when there's no intent specified, commercial-led vanishes. Now, I know what you're all thinking, you're hotel people, you're like, okay, Blake, obviously, this is Mallorca, this is Park City. If you don't specify intent, why would you recommend a commercial property? And to that, I say, you're right, that does make sense. That does make sense. But ladies and gentlemen, look at Paris and Barcelona. A lot of corporate demand there, a lot of business transient demand there, and you could see that, again, with no intent, no bias, you could see for generic, it pretty much vanishes, okay? So the implication here is that the words, the descriptions that are used across your listings, that is telling the AI who to recommend to you. And that is a great segue to section number 3. Where does it all come from, okay? We're going to give you guys a good understanding of where it's coming from. Like I said, this is changing. But right now, this is going to give you a look under the hood. Okay, we're going to look at this from 2 different angles. The first angle we're going to look at is what's called sources. Sources are right there, okay? Now, the way this generally works, the AI has consumed a massive, massive amount of the internet. And when you do a prompt, the AI is going to look at the sources, in this case, 71 sources, and what it's doing is it's cross-referencing. It's basically trying to decide what to show you. And the sources are how the AI is cross-referencing what it already knows, fact-checking, and making sure it spits back to you what you want to know, okay? It's determining what to show you. So, source link on the bottom, that's what that is. Now, 82% of what the AI is deciding to show you is coming from these 2 sources, categories. OTA and metasearch, and editorial and media. OTA metasearch, that's going to be things like Booking, Expedia. Editorial and media, that's going to be things like Condé Nast Traveler, things like Lonely Planet, those types of sources. The vast majority comes from these 2 categories. So the accuracy and the clarity of the information on these types of sites is critical, and this is how critical. You can see just the breakdown of the sources that everything is coming from, okay? So what does this mean? You guys being mentioned on articles like the best of type lists, that is no longer just for PR. That, again, is algorithm input. Local authorities on the very, very bottom, those are like DMO sites, non-existent. But here's the thing. This is not the full story. This is only part of the story. Because 71 sources, right? I don't know if people are really looking at 71 sources when they do a search, right? What are they doing? To complete the story, we now need to look at where the AI is sending the user for next steps. Where are they sending the user? For that, we're going to look at what we call clickable links. ChatGPT gives you tons of places to click. We have the citations, which are in the bottom right, and you can click that. That's going to be like a little thing that you can click on, and it says, hey, this is how I know this. That's what the citations are. But we have map links, we have referral links, we have inline links, tons of places for the user to click. Now, here is the story. This is the other half of the story. This shows where AI is sending the users for next steps. And what we could see is that the OTA and metasearch drop dramatically. Dramatically, okay? We also see the editorial and media, the knowledge anchors, dropping dramatically. And look what gains it, your website. Most of the outbound traffic is being sent to your individual websites. But I want to show you one more thing, okay? The clickable links on the bottom, you can click those. You totally can, and I'm sure plenty of people do. However, the intention of those are the real true next step ones. Those are the hyperlinks, those are the map links. That's what I think most people are generally clicking on. You can click on the citations, but they're not necessarily intended as a click on. It's more of a, this is how I know this, by the way, you can click here. So if we take the citations out, this is what it looks like in terms of where the traffic is going. Pretty much everything is going to your websites. Okay? So here's what it comes down to, ladies and gentlemen. If the AI finds you, and that's a big if, users are getting an express lane to your website. So it comes down to this. Are you guys doing everything you can do to make sure you are discoverable? And then lastly, are you doing everything you can do to capture the direct booking, just like Carrie was talking about? So I bet you're all thinking, okay, that was a lot of information. Now what do I do? Well, here's a quick little summary of things you could think about doing and bringing back to your own hotel. Number one, treat PR and editorial coverage as if it's a distribution channel. Okay? You need to maximize your chances of being mentioned. Editorial coverage, things like Forbes and Condé Nast Traveler and Lonely Planet, best of lists. Those lists are not just good for perception. Those are AI sources. Okay? The lines between distribution and between PR strategy are melting away. Number two, audit your various listings. Okay? They're an AI data feed. Expedia, Kayak, TripAdvisor, Booking. That is what the AI is using to decide what to actually show you. If the listings are incomplete, if the listings are stale, that is what the AI is working with, okay? That is what the AI is working with. Beyond that, the reviews, the physical, qualitative reviews, also very much informing the AI. Audit your content language against your target guest. The language on your website is critical. The language on all digital touchpoints is critical. Does it match your target guest? If not, you're likely getting the wrong travelers or no travelers at all. Know where you actually stand on AI today. This is truly critical. Before you can improve, you need to know where you currently stand. Open ChatGPT. Do some searches. Are you mentioned at all? Is it generically mentioned? Are you mentioned for a certain traveler type? A lot of people have not done this, and that means you're essentially trying to manage a distribution channel that you haven't even seen. And lastly, build for maximizing the direct channel, because as we see, the traffic is going to be there. The links are to your sites. Now, what can you actually do, like Carrie was saying, to make sure you get the booking and they don't go somewhere else? And ladies and gentlemen, the data tells you where the gaps are. Now it is about closing them. Thank you so very much. We will be back here in 15 minutes. Thank you.